Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out this evening. My name is Rob May. I'm Director of Planning and Economic Development for the City of Brockton. And I am very excited for this third public meeting? Fourth public meeting to talk about a Montello master plan. And we've had a lot of feedback from the neighbors, residents, property owners, business owners. And at our last meeting, we took all those thoughts and ideas and we turned to the consulting team and said, okay, cool ideas, what does that look like? Can you do what we call a test fit? And let's look this thing out. And we're going to be going through some of those different concepts that incorporate those ideas. And again, the one caveat, this is like, some of this stuff could happen tomorrow. Some of this is going to take 20 years. You know, there's property owners who are active users of their facilities, but at some point in time, they may want to retire. And what are the options for their retiring? And could they become part of a redevelopment plan in their golden years? I don't know why they call it golden years because I got silver hair, so that's another story. All right, I'm going to turn this over to Emily and her team, and here we go.
Thank you very much, Rob. Good evening, everyone. It's lovely to see you all, especially on such an icky evening, but at least it's a little bit warmer. So I'm going to just set the framework, and I'm going to turn it over to the rest of the team to talk about the details. We are going to give you an opportunity, once you've kind of seen the explanation up here, to go and spend as much time as you like looking at the details. So I do want to set this in sort of the context of the other things that are going on in Brockton right now. So we, from Innes Associates, my name is Emily Innes, this is Paolo Ramos Martinez, and Mark as well. We also have our team from Over Under, if you want to raise your hands. So you'll be hearing from all of them during this period. But I want to set this in the context of we have been working with the city to do zoning changes for specific areas within the city. The city had started a long time ago with a downtown plan, so that's been part of the zoning that we've worked with. We helped the city along with some other consultants for the Campello neighborhood plan 2 years ago now. We've been working on that zoning. Our next one here is Montello. We've been working, this neighborhood plan will help to inform the zoning, but it will also do other things that we're going to talk about tonight. And we've also been working in the Lovett Brook area. So as we look at Montello, this specific neighborhood, partway in the back of our mind is how does this also fit with the rezoning effort that the city's doing, but with that, what else goes along with the rezoning? Infrastructure improvements, for example. Thinking about if you rezone something, what should the public benefits be? So there's been sort of this coordinated effort in different neighborhoods, and so some of you who have been to previous meetings may have seen this, but tonight we're very much focused on Montello. Rob, you want to say something before I go to the timeline?
Yes, before we go to the timeline, just for everybody's edification, I guess, we're concentrating around the station area and part of the village and up to Main Street, and the study area encompasses 2 wards. Sorry, it disappeared for a second. Ward 7, and we're joined here by our ward councilor, Shirley Asak, and it's also in Ward 6, which is Councilor Jack Lally, who couldn't be here this evening. We're also joined here by Councilor Phil Griffin from the 6th Ward, or excuse me, 3rd Ward.
I might have to annex Ward 6 now.
Annex it. You're here at the meeting, you can claim it. And then the rest of the Brockton team, yay, 5. Nice. All right, thanks a lot, sorry.
No worries, no worries. Always important to have everybody in the room recognized. So let me go through, so before I do that, so we're going to talk about what we call fit studies. I'll explain what those are in a minute in high detail. Paula's going to go through one by one. We're also going to talk about our communication strategies. So for those of you who have seen a neighborhood plan before, the way they normally look is there's an introduction, there's a map of the neighborhood, we talk about the existing conditions, there'll be economic conditions, there'll be the physical conditions, we'll talk a little bit about who's in the neighborhood. Then we have things like the fit studies, you know, what is the plan, what are the concepts, what do they look like? And then we have something called an implementation plan at the end. And the implementation plan is usually a table of actions. Sometimes it's got financing strategy next to it. Sometimes it has other strategies. As we listened to the neighborhood throughout this process, we thought we'd like to do something a little bit different. So often, zoning is really hard to talk about because it's very nebulous. It's all about what could maybe happen in the future. So it creates options for property owners. But in order for those options to be realized, first of all, it's a choice of the property owner what they do with their property, but it also involves a lot of other voices. It involves the residents, it involves future developers who could be the property owners or could be something else. It involves people at the city level, elected officials, city staff. It involves state agencies sometimes for some of the funding options. So what we wanted to do with this plan is talk about the plan from the perspective of the different roles. And so in addition to the fit studies that you're going to see, over under our team on this has been working on capturing the voices of the people who have different roles in any development project or any plan for the community. And you'll see those over on boards there. We're looking for your comments to understand if we've captured those voices correctly, if it makes sense to you. And so as part of what we do, it's going to be refining that communication strategy so people understand what the plan means to them. In terms of fit studies, again, when you do zoning changes, it's very nebulous. In your current zoning, for example, if you've ever looked at it, it's a lot of text. We talk about dimensional standards in there, how big, how high, where on the lot. It doesn't really mean anything to people who don't work with zoning. So what we try to do with fit studies is show that physically in terms of what's the maximum build out. If you took all the rules that were in place, how could that actually work on a site? And then that allows us to show that to you and say, is this what you envisioned? Does this make sense to you? Should we change something? And then we can go back and tweak it. For those of you who are at the form-based code, the form-based code kind of takes that three-dimensionality that we show here in terms of the buildings and translates that into pictures for a code rather than just text. So know that what we hear from you today is actually going to flow back into what we do with the code as well. So your voices on that, your thoughts, your comments, I don't understand this, but I really like that, that's really important for thinking about not just the content of the plan, but the content of the form-based code as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. Actually, I'm going to do the timeline first, just so you can see where we've been. We've done the introduction. So we're here at the public meeting. We've been working with a steering committee. So we've had 4 meetings with the steering committee. And those are people who have an interest in whether they live or work or know something about the area. It's a smaller group. We test ideas like this with them before we bring them to the public. We had another Montello-only neighborhood meeting. And then we had 2 form-based code workshops that included the Montello neighborhood. And then we had that 3rd steering committee meeting up there. So this is where we are now. We have not yet started to write the plans, so we're still very much in draft form and looking for input. So I'm going to turn it over to Paula. I look forward to hearing your input at the end. Paula?
Hello everyone, my name is Paula. I'm with Innes Associates and I'm the Senior Planner, Urban Designer. So these are the 5 sites that we selected. And we selected either because it is a very particular and special area. So for example, the train station. So yeah, the train station area, or where we have all the industrial uses. So this is another very characteristic from the area. It's not representing other parts of the neighborhood, but it's special. Then we have the southern part. This is site 5, where we have a lot of vacant areas. We have the trout brook. Some of it is open, some of it is canalized. We have some flooding issues. So this is also a very specific area in the neighborhood. Another one very differentiated from the other would be this, where the Stop and Shop is, with a large parking, very much car development. and then the wetlands in front. So we cannot build because of the wetlands, right? So these are four that are very characteristics from the neighborhood. And then another one, even though it has some characteristic issues because it has the Howard School, which is a historic building that we're trying to maintain, it does have other characteristics that are going to be more extendable for the rest of Montello Street, or that could also be extended to Main Street. So we have selected these 5 sites, and we are going one by one to see what we have proposed. Just to keep in mind, this is it doesn't mean that this is going to be the result. This means it's just one possibility that we envision. And this is very long term. It doesn't mean that it's going to come tomorrow. This is something that could happen in the future. What we've heard from the residents in the previous public meetings was about a walkable neighborhood, more commercial and mixed use. Commercial, not the type of car development oriented, but more pedestrian. So a little cafe, a small restaurant, a convenience store, things that are a smaller scale and for people walking. So we took that into account, and what you can see here, so this is the existing. We have the Stop and Shop, we have the big parking, and then the Albion Street has a different level, so it's going up. Let's say that this is 0, and then going up is 1 level up, so 10 foot up, and then again we go back down. So we are taking that level difference in consideration for the plan, and we will see it later. One of the biggest changes that we are doing in infrastructure, besides obviously giving a mixed-use area where we have commercial towards the North Montello Street, we activate the wetlands area and have it more for public engagement, so for people to be able to use the space. And then the residential areas will go in the upper levels or towards Laurie Avenue, Newton Avenue, and Albion Avenue. The biggest change is in infrastructure is that Albion Street ends when it's connecting to Clarence, and Clarence Street is being extended. What this does is that if you look into the existing, Albion continues, and we have here this big node of traffic. We are trying to avoid that and make it as safe as possible. So cutting here and making Clarence Street to continue towards North Montello, we break that node into 2 different places. So we are trying to have less traffic in these nodes. And so that also gives us the opportunity to have some square and some space for more green areas and resting areas that will be connected to them crossing towards the wetland. So we have here a little bit more demonstration. So all these, every site has a board which is going to be over there. And what we would love is for you to, after I make the explanations, you can ask questions if something is not clear, but also you can put all your stickers or your comments so we can take it and towards the final draft. So what we are having here is the plan more in detail. We have this section that goes from Newton Avenue towards North Montello. We see here on the back of the site, here's the level difference. So we see Newton Avenue to be higher than North Montello. We are taking that difference of height to have the parking in this green, sorry, I think it's clear. In this gray area, that will be the parking. And so what that gives us is the opportunity to build on top and have all the residential on top. That also allows us to have an upper level square that can be public during the day for all the neighbors, and that it can be closed from the entrance. Here we have the stairs, and here the others. So these areas can be closed, and during the night, only the residents will use it. This gives us also the possibilities to have different public squares. We have here one. We try to do some kind of a stepping stone. So we have here one, another one here, and then we have the terrace that we saw, the others over there. And yeah, so these will be, the upper level square is this area where beneath we have the parking. These more yellow, usually the darker yellow will be the ground floor. The more vanilla, kind of yellowish, this kind of more whitish, is going to be always an upper level and more semi-public kind of a square. So here we have the ground square in the public square in the ground floor. Then we have all those commercial ground floors towards North Montello that also serves this square, and then residential on top. And then we would have that connection to the wetlands. And here we see the representation of all these axo. So the red colors usually means an active use. It doesn't mean that it has to be commercial or retail. It means that it can be some small office, the amenities of the residential, or any commercial and retail. So it's a mix of those. It's something that makes our street more active. This is side 2. So in the side 2, it's where the North Main Street with Howard Street, this area, this crossing. This is your historic building, Howard School, very beautiful with the chimney. It's something that we wanted to preserve. It's just that in order to make it economically feasible to restore all this, we need to have more building area. So what we do is building this area, we have some ground floor retail and then some residential on top. This will frame this more intimate square for the residents or neighbors around, but it's a bit more of a discovery kind of a square. And then we also build this area around so we can enclose more this area that right now it's very open, a very big green space that is actually not being used, doesn't have any function at the moment. So we try to activate it with a ground floor commercial and then having more enclosed space, more cozy in a way. These areas we're trying to make it more with surface parking that gives us less density, but around 3 to 4 stories high. We think that is something very conservative, but also very good for this street that also has a lot of neighborhood around. One of the biggest changes in here in infrastructure is that we're proposing to Wilmington Street to be mainly pedestrian, and only the residents that are living here could come with their cars and obviously park in their house. But we're trying to make this street pedestrian. And why we do that is because also in the comments that we had from the people was a lot of the times we don't understand very well where the train station is. It's not very intuitive enough. People get a bit mixed. So what we're trying is to really make that kind of access to this station very clear. So that's why we try to keep the cars out and obviously bring more trees and green. So if we go to more specific, if we do the section in this area where you see the dash line, black line, here we have the surface parking, then we have the building which goes from 3 to 4 stories high, then we have the Montello Street, and the other side the public square that I was talking about. Historic building is in the ground floor, and then we build above another 3 stories. That historic kind of public square where we would have the chimney somewhere in the middle, and then this new addition, which is the ground floor, retail and active use, and then 4 on top residential.
I just wanted to say, we all eat and breathe this kind of stuff, but to help understand what this dotted line is coming through the plan, is a black dotted line. I know it's kind of hard to see with so much light in here. So if you think about this, I'm looking at a birthday cake. This is all the frosting, the icing, all the candles, all the cool stuff on top of it. If I cut it in half at this dotted line and open it up, these then are the layers. So this corresponds to that. So I'm looking at it sideways. Thank you. I thought it was a good idea.
I like cake.
That is absolutely great. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. Sometimes we get into the technical, and sorry for that. Yeah, thank you very much.
So you could look into them.
So if we go to the side 3, and if there's anything that you need questions, we can go back to the sides and clarify. This is the train station area. What we do is, here's Wilmington Street, and we try to emphasize that crossing. A lot of issues where the west side of the train station and the east side, because of the rail lines, is very divided. How can we unify and bring those together? We have 2 options actually. The easiest one, and I think that is a given, even if we do the second option or not, is just to strengthen that crossing at the ground floor level. So if we do some squares in one side and the other, that will, with the pedestrian street coming from Wilmington, that will give us that nice connection, very visual and very efficient. If we think that there is still a need for another connection from Field Street, it was divided and it was cut because of the rail, and then you have the other Field Street in the other side, right? So what we could do is bring a bridge to connect these 2 areas. Now, it's going to be quite costly because it needs to go quite high in a very reduced space. So we don't have a lot of space, but we could use the building in order to go up and then cross. Now we need to understand if that is something that we need, that investment, or if this crossing would be enough. So that's something that I would really like you to answer in the side 3.
Or from the existing Field Street viaduct. The
Yes.
platform goes further south, and so we could build something there already over the tracks and connect the neighborhood better to the platform.
Yeah, so we will need to cross it or come from the platform in this area and then go
Coming
up.
further south.
Is it something
There,
like that?
yeah, from there.
The only issue is that these streets are very narrow. There are a lot of space, so the walking and the sidewalks are a bit difficult. But that is definitely something that we could also do as another option. So these areas, what we try to do is very similar to what we did in the first side, is having a plinth. This will be easier to explain. So again, the cake, and this dash line is where we're going to cut the cake. And so what we plan to do here is we have the rail lines, we have the parking, and we build on top. Now, some around 30 feet or even more, depending on the area that we're cutting, is going to be active use. So it's going to be retail, it's going to be the amenities for the residential, and then on top, we can build. This will give us a little bit of density. We need to cover this by surface parking. This is not possible. Then we go to very low density. We barely can do much in here. So that's why this is what we propose. And then we can give that open space level in the on top of the parking, right? And that's what you see in here. I'm going to go back so we can see it all. So all these yellowish, more light yellow, what you see is the plinth, and all these white parts are going to be the buildings on top. And then we have some areas which will be those upper level squares that are going to be mainly for the residents. Then we have some cuts at the ground level, and that means that these are ground level public squares. So we have one in here and another one in here. So we can also have some cuts while walking along the street. And then we have this area, which is more about, this is Montello's, so they will, yeah. So in here we have Montello's. The logistic was something that was asked for this in the steering committee. They are usually parking in here. That makes it very unsafe, this area. So we are trying to bring logistics into the front and to use this area. And this will be under, like, if we have some logistics sold with the parking. That is the strategy, because this area is very difficult to have logistics anywhere. So that's the place that we can up to. So again, the section, okay, we are in here, we are cutting on some of the public squares at the ground level to see that difference. So we have commercial or retail or active use towards Montello. Then we have the parking, 3 levels of residential. This goes from 3 to 5, as you see in here in the other areas. We protected the residents in the public areas with these green buffers along the rail lines. And then we have the public square towards Spark Street. Okay, if we continue. The industrial campus. So in here we also have integrated some parking from the steering committee presentation. The idea behind this is we will keep the companies that, or at least the building, because it's quite new, it's quite efficient, it has the solar, and it has a very good efficiency build-out ratio. And then what we are expecting here for the new industry that will come is less logistic intense, so less trucks in this area. We think that that should not be really in residential, but more towards the highway. And so here we imagine some life science, some prototyping, some food industry, but always very more low intensity, especially with traffic. So what we do is more of a campus. What we want is that they share all the logistics spaces, so it's not all a big open asphalt park, but that they have this backbone that all of them use and all can beneficiate from, and then we have some open areas so that they can do their logistics. And then on the northern part, we have smaller, this is more like incubator kind of a thing, where smaller companies come into these places to develop their prototype and their idea of a business, and that they can, when they grow enough, they can move to a bigger one or move towards more industrial highway area. We've brought these, continuing with the acts from the Wilmington, the crossing from the station to towards the other side, with that public space and that open areas, public and active areas, and that's where this sits. So here, all of the workers will come to have their lunch to anyone that can come into work here, or just waiting or having a meeting, that they can do it in that public area. We have 2, the big one, main one, and then another one here. We try to always fence all the residential areas with a green buffer, so that you see over there. Here we go to the axle. We were asked to really have the buildings towards the houses to be lower, because today Dyer Street can be very in shadow. So the lower buildings were done on the, well, this and these ones will be on the Dyer side very low, and the higher buildings will come towards the Spark Street. And then the final one, so this is the most ambitious, and it's the most ambitious because also a lot of these industrial areas are vacant. We have a lot of flooding issues. So what we have here is the highest density will be in this site. We bring a new street on the back of the site towards the rail, and this will give us the opportunity to bring all the cars and all the parkings that will be in here. So we bring the cars on the back. So on this new street, this is the backbone for parking that liberates Spark Street, and then these other buildings will be parked from Intervale. In the between, these parking, these buildings that are also residential and some commercial will be fed. Their parking will be in these bigger buildings. What that gives us is a pedestrian area, is parked from this area, from the top, towards Ames. These will be all pedestrian. And of course, pedestrian doesn't mean that no cars are allowed. We can have logistics, we can have emergency vehicles, we can have moving day, and you have permission to come with with your van and be able to do all your moving. So there are permissions, it's just that mainly, the majority of the time, won't be used for cars and will be used for pedestrian. So to make it as walkable as possible. And then we have the opening of the brook, also having more, adding some topography so we can have some storing water. And we have one on the upper part and another one on the back. We have some new brooks opening. And with that, we create a new landscape area in between. And so these buildings, which are commercial and residential, can live on the park. Now, if we go to the section that Kate cut in here, we have this dash line. If we are cutting here, this is what it looks like. Now, the west part of it, the one that is looking to the rail, back to the rail, that's where we put all the height. That is something that I also want from you. How do you feel with that? Is it too high? Is it too low? We want your opinions on that. So if we are cutting from here, there are 3 areas that are meant to be the bigger towers, that are the ones that are more towards the back, which is this one here, and this one here. These are having these 3 layers of parking. They will have the public parking as well. And then they have the bigger towers. This one over here are 1 or 2 layers of parking, and then these smaller areas are just the highest point, but it will be something around 7 to 8 stories. So we have the 14, and these bigger ones are the 8 stories high. The middle, the one that is more in the park and the pedestrian part, are very low, are going to be 3 maximum. And we can have some of these to be some kind of pavilion, community center, really to bring the neighborhood together. And then the ones on the back towards the intervale go up to 6. And these are all around here. These are smaller in the back. These are going to be also residential, and these are maximum 4. And that's what we're going to see in the section. We have the bigger towers with the 3 layers of parking. Towards this park, this is the active floors, and this means commercial, office, small office, or retail amenities. Then we have the spark pedestrian, 3 levels of residential, which some of them will have some commercial towards the brook, so we can have some coffee towards the brook. And then we will have some other residential or some parking and upper level plaza. And then towards the intervale, these 6 stories, with also some active ground floor. So I know this is a lot. We gave a lot of information, so we are here. You can ask anything, and we will also have it there. We will be there for all your questions. I'm going to pass it to Matthew from Brander. He will explain our communication strategy, but we can come back to this later.
Alrighty, hi everyone, my name is Matthew Messery. I'm a resident of Brockton. I live on John Drive, just up the street, but I also work at Over Under. So I'm sure if you guys have either been to the meetings or not to the meetings, this is a lot of information, right? So we want this information from this plan to be accessible to everyone, okay? So we have developed kind of a communication strategy that's for a series of stakeholders. We kind of categorize them into 5 groups of people. There's the state, the city, a developer, a landowner, and a resident like me. And so the idea for these kind of slides is to help everyone understand, kind of use this as a cheat sheet. Maybe you don't understand the plan the first time you open up the PDF or you look at the booklet, but these pages are kind of trying to help you figure out what you need to know, how to help yourself and how to help others, and understand the booklet. So these pages or slides are based off of a series of questions. Kind of think of them as like a frequently asked question page. So the idea for these pages is for kind of common questions that people might have, and a response or an answer to the question that you would have. So for example, this one is, I'm a resident, how should I do this plan?
Well, not,
And then we break it down, say it's a form-based plan or a form-based code, and it's kind of a roadmap to help us see what the future of this neighborhood is going to look like, or what we want it to look
I'm
like.
looking the south, so I thought it meant capital A.
And then these pages go on, so there's multiple questions from each different type of stakeholder. This one asks, what do I need to know about zoning and development? Kind of zoning and development is to kind of, it's not focused entirely on the building itself, it's also how we're going to live every day. So it's more than just kind of regulating what can be here and what can be there. It's about kind of everyone's everyday life. And how can you get involved? I'm assuming we're all residents of Brockton here, and we all kind of want to have a stake in the game, right? We want to help the future, and so there's a lot of ways to help with that. You can check the website, you can talk to your neighbor across the street, you can go to your ward counselor, you can go to Jack Lally, you can also attend community meetings, like you're all here today, and you can also respond to surveys that you might get in the mail. And then we move on to questions kind of from the developers, because this kind of communication strategy isn't just for a resident or a landowner, it's for everyone. So it should be used by everyone who kind of hears about the plan, that has a question. And these questions are supposed to help everyone together as a collaborative effort, not just an individual. So if I'm a developer, how should I do this plan? And we kind of give you a quick cheat sheet, understanding of what it is. So the plan is really to help enforce the idea of kind of these common goals or objectives, what everyone, the residents, the stakeholders, what we want the future of our neighborhood to look like. Then there's other questions. How do I work with the property owner? So if I'm a developer or if I'm a property owner, you're probably going to talk to one another, and you should kind of know your rights and seek a partnership, see if it's good or not, and so on and so forth. And then I'll hand it back to Tola for the next steps.
Yeah, this is something that we can also look at later. At the end, I can go very quickly. From your comments that we will ask later, we will prepare a draft. That draft will be presented to the steering committee. The steering committee will have some comments, so we will again apply those comments to the draft and bring it back to the public. We will gather public comments and then we will have the final version. That is the next step that we will have. Before moving to the activity, one last thing that maybe I didn't mention, I just want to make sure that I do. In these sites are not residential areas because we are not touching the residential areas. We are going to protect the residential areas. The neighborhoods, the SF1 and other neighborhoods, residential neighborhoods, are going to be protected with the form-based code. That is why we are not touching them. So yeah, any questions?
Where I see the green, are you proposing to plant trees in all those areas?
Yes. That is the goal, or that's the vision that we hope it will be. In the document draft, we also want to have the green infrastructure, the vision for green infrastructure, so all the streets that we would like to have with trees, all the public and how to connect all those public spaces. Also bike paths, if the community wants that, where that could be, so the mobility as well. Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to confirm, because I heard will we plant these? Just remember too that this is a zoning exercise, so everything you hear is intended to give a vision for what can happen here. It's intended to help feed into the zoning, but this is absolutely not a project in which something, what we're showing is the idea of aspirational concepts that lead to the zoning, but it's not, okay, tomorrow, you like it today, tomorrow we're going to be applying for a building permit. I know in many communities, that when we're doing zoning, people start getting excited or sometimes worried, and expect this to go, well, when was the project start? So you gave me the opportunity to
Right.
clarify it, which I
I'm glad you
appreciate
did.
that.
So as projects come online, things get implemented.
Right, exactly.
So it would be up to the city to demand
Yes.
that there would be green space.
Within the zoning,
Right.
to say in the zoning, you are required to have green space.
Okay.
And that would be part of how we lay that out.
Okay.
Yeah, so in the zoning, so for private property, everything that is in private property, that's for zoning, gives the strategies or the rules, let's say. For example, for the form-based code, we have the green score. And so there we ask for a minimum of green strategies for multifamily, for example. So that will be one thing applied. Now, is it exactly like that in the private? No, this is just a vision, one project. There can be many other possibilities. What we want to also have in the neighborhood is the vision of the residents for their public space. That doesn't mean that it's going to happen, but at least you have some document where you have the visions of the residents that you ask for your green in the public space.
So the idea is that through this vision, if the community, likes this vision, the zoning that we write will, once approved by city council, if projects come online and people want to do something, it's going to need to look like this, because this is what the community wanted. So it's the guiding principle that we're working on tonight, not necessarily I'm going to building there tomorrow, but this is what we're aiming for in the future.
So you and then over here. Yes.
Greg Belcher, Montello Business Association, represent my members tonight. I don't see much the businesses section in. They talked a lot about residence stuff, not like how much business you want to bring into Brockton. I'd like to be positive on the businesses, side of it.
Yes, thank you very much. When you look at these, when you look at up here, you'll see there's a red color on some of the buildings. So Paolo talked about that being as active space. We are envisioning that active space could be restaurant, it could be retail, small businesses. The idea as we were listening to people from the previous meetings is the sort of business that would support and be supported by the neighborhoods, with the exception of that industrial area that Paolo talked about, where we're looking at, okay, what types of businesses that could produce certain types of jobs in that area. So I think Rob's going to point out the red color there, and you'll see it more when you look at the slice of the cake as well.
So this is, just to give people's orientation, this is where the FootJoy property is. And there's a lot of open parking lot that could be redeveloped. And so we're hoping that this whole area becomes more of a job center and a place where tax revenue is being generated. And then along some of the other streets, you'll see that there's more commercial development on the first and second floors as you go up and down Main Street or up and down Sparks or up and down Intervale.
My question again is, I came from Brookfield back in the 60s. Everybody had watched into Brockton, and Brockton probably longer than most of the people in here. But most of the Brockton people that work go over the Howard Street Bridge. Have you thought of that, and how are you going to help the traffic of those people who are working hard to get on Montello to get onto the Harrison Boulevard, which is the only way to that area?
Like widen it or something.
Especially
Can you go to that
Yeah, to the whole line.
slide? Do you have that?
Right there.
yes, Site 5. Clarence
Back.
Street.
There. So this is an intersection. This is North Montello and Howard, and this is Sparks and Howard. And so that's an area that we're going to have to study a little bit more. That road at Howard Street is so freaking wide, and I think we've talked about pitching some of that off to make it, to narrow it, and make it, the lanes line up better with each other. And then we're going to have to do an intersection study to figure out how that works. Because as you come around and then you have Winter, which is where the stoplight is, it all backs up onto and you can't get out on Sparks, and so we're gonna have to figure out how that whole intersection works, which is another planning study. Yay.
Yeah, and sorry, I did want to speak to that the neighborhood plan introduces the concepts for the infrastructure change, but you're gonna have to have civil engineers and traffic engineers look at how that would actually be realized. But to Rob's point, and to what Paula said earlier, the idea is to clean up that intersection to make it easier to go through more safely than it is now.
Is how many more cars are you bringing into the area, because you're making, you're gonna have parking, right, and how many spaces per unit? Is it 1.5? You know, I just watched the fairgrounds go, and we talked about how many spaces are gonna be out there, and how many units are gonna build in a little area of 50 acres.
So you just asked a classic question at a zoning meeting, and I'm so glad you did, because it allows me to bring it up. Did we calculate the parking spaces that you used for this? Yeah, so because we have an example development volume, we can estimate how many parking spaces would fit here. But of course, that gives us an idea at a conceptual level. Individual projects that come in, the size that we're showing in these fit studies, they're probably going to be coming in as site plan review level. Some of them may even be special permit level. At that point, that's when the traffic studies come in and are required. You don't typically do traffic studies at a zoning concept level, or even necessarily at a neighborhood plan level, but they do come in the development process.
Is that after the council approves it?
So they approve the zoning, they don't approve the project by project. That comes in front of the planning board for site plan review or special permit. So again, and I can let Rob and his team go through the exact development process, but traffic studies, the other impact studies that typically come in, those all come in when somebody's saying, look, this is the project I want to build. It is one of the hardest conversations to have in zoning because of that. It's not concrete enough to do that type of study.
Right, your zoning will supersede the city's zoning after you're approved by council. So what I'm saying is, many people don't know that what happens is we have zoning to protect the areas of the house, or what's around you, what's built. And we got all different departments who get involved to protect the neighbors, you know. Once that's done, now I heard there was a 10-foot setback with some of these properties you're trying to, get relief from. And it's almost like putting those buildings in to squish them in. And I was talking to a couple of fire chiefs, and they were like, well, that's gonna be scary.
So I think you should have a look at these and see that the setbacks are not 10 feet, right? They're a little bit more from there, but again, so this plan comes out, that questions that you had is why we've got the communication strategy, is so that people are aware of all departments that have a role in this, what they do and how they do it. I mean, I think you are bringing up exactly the questions that we were hoping to answer through this process, so I appreciate that.
So we'll have a list of key infrastructure that we know that we need to study, and the plan will make a recommendation that the city invest in that.
Why would they not bring the fire chief down here just to meet with the residents and explain, don't worry about it, it's gonna be safe around here?
Because it's not at that level. Right now, we're trying to say, this is the vision that we heard. Do you agree with it? We've got another step or two before it comes to something where we're asking the fire chief for his thoughts on it. So it's not that we won't, it's just where we are in the process. So if you don't mind, I would like to let a couple of other people.
My final question.
Yes, of course.
State rep was here, so thank you, state rep.
Yes.
My question to her is, the state auditor said that she's not gonna fund the MBTA Act. What do you hear in the State House about that?
So what the state auditor said, so there's a law that says if it's found by one state department to be a mandate that had a cost to it, then when the law passed, it should have had a funding mechanism to it. But when the law passed, it hadn't been determined to be a mandate. It was only, the MBTA community was, and please correct me if you know I'm wrong, the MBTA community was only determined to be a mandate when it went to the court before the judge. And there is a funding mechanism that had come in after the fact for the MBTA community, and I think that the legislature and the governor is willing to release more funds to make it accessible for communities to be able to zone for the MBTA Community Act without it being too onerous on their budgets. And that has the auditor has no control over allocating money. She has control over, once it's determined to be an unfunded mandate by the courts, she then can make the statement that she made. She did a really great explanation of this on Jim Brody's show. She's on hour 2 of the show that just happened like 2 days ago, where she explains it, because it's confusing, and you can check it out, go to like hour 2, and she's on there, and she's on for 30 minutes, she talks about this, and then she sings for us all. So it's good.
And I just want to say, this project is being funded by the state's Department, Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities.
And to counter on you on Governor Healy, she announced today that there's going to be a 2% increase in every middle-class citizen here again, so there'll be a $1,200 extra fee that's going to happen. It was in the paper today.
Any other questions on Montello and the vision before we release you to go have a look at it? Yes, come on up. Yes.
Joe Walker, Ward 6. So similar to his questions, as far as the residential plans,
Yep.
what's the percentage that we're planning for apartments versus condos? How many size units will those be sufficient? And we have a shortage of 3-bedroom units
Yes.
available in this community, and so making sure that we have the right size for the people that live here.
So excellent question. So just to repeat the percentage of condominiums versus apartments, the size of the units. There's a shortage of 3 bedrooms in the city. So again, you're asking another really critical question that usually comes up in zoning. Zoning does not speak to ownership. In other words, you don't zone for condos or zone for apartments. What you do is you allow the land use, and then the ownership is set up by the person who comes forward and exercises their option under the zoning. So we're not saying condos versus apartments. Healthy communities have a combination of both, right? You want to make sure you have a variety of housing for everybody's needs within the community, but the zoning doesn't speak to it. Similarly, although there are some zoning codes out there, ordinances or bylaws, that place limitations on bedrooms, number or size, this zoning does not. We leave that flexible. The market demand will, as you say, if there's needed, then there's a market demand for it. That will come forward as part of the zoning. We're not limiting the number of bedrooms or the unit size.
One of the places
I don't know.
where we as a city need to do better is as these developers come into our community, and it could be existing property owners too, because we have a lot of those who are doing their own redevelopment. But when they come to us for financial assistance, a tax break or something like that, we should be requiring a larger percentage of either affordable or larger number of bedrooms. That's all part of a regional housing policy that we're working with the Old Colony Planning Council on. We're looking at all the communities that touch Brockton and the city of Brockton itself, so that we have a comprehensive policy as a community and not just as a bunch of independent fiefdoms.
It's a really huge point in terms of what the city should require or recommend. Something like a neighborhood plan, zoning will tell you sort of the how much, the where, how wide, where it fits on the lot. The neighborhood plan can talk about the why. And so when I hear you say Brockton needs more 3-family houses, that's something that 3-family units, sorry, that's something that we can put into the plan and say, you know, developer, if you're going to do something, you should read this plan, see what the community wanted. Look, they need more 3-bedroom units. Maybe you should be supplying that. So again, hearing your thoughts on that is something that we can incorporate at this stage. Yes, ma'am.
My question, and this is maybe more for you, when these studies are being done, do we take into consideration our existing infrastructure, pipe, like the stuff that you can't see? And to make sure it can support what's being
Yes,
tested?
that's a very good question, and for the microphone, I guess.
Yeah.
When we make these plans, do we take into account what's under the ground? Do we have enough capacity in sewer and water and storm drain? And we've noticed that there's not a lot of capacity in storm drain up here, and that's something that we really need to address through this redevelopment process. And I think you'll see that we try to address some of that in the Trout Brook area by daylighting the creek, the brook itself. It's in a culvert right now, and that constrains its flow, which causes it to back up into the neighborhoods. And by daylighting it, what they mean, to take the top off of it, it gives it some breathing room, allows it to expand. We'll also come up with one of the recommendations that we have, and what we've done in other places, is that when you have this vision, the next thing we need to do is a transportation and utility plan. We did that in downtown, and we're now implementing that. That's the next phase after this. As long as the money keeps flowing, keep that department funded. But we have a very public engaging process. We want to know what people are thinking, so that we make sure that we have the resources here in the future. So we know that we have good sewer capacity, and we're uphill from a lot of the cities, so that helps us. We have decent water capacity also, because of the water tank at Cary Hill. And where we're lacking is the storm capacity, and that's something that we've really got to work on. And the lack of green space.
Well, that was going to be my question.
Yeah.
Was there ever any thought on Intervale, between Intervale and Spark, where you daylighted this river to just take out the development there and make that a green space between the neighborhood and this high-density housing, so that middle section would kind of go away and leave the high-density housing off the new street, and then just have that whole area be a green area for water and more, environment, for enjoyment for all these many people we're moving into the area?
It's far away, and you can't see it very well, but if you see along the Trout Brook, there's a path that wanders through
Yeah.
here. We've opened it up so that this is open from Intervale and allows people to come through. There are some of these buildings, and we forgot to shade them again. Some of them are more community amenity type buildings.
But was there any thought to take all the buildings that are right along Intervale and just let that all be green space?
That's an interesting idea. I think we got to look at the economics of that and how we pay for other things. And if we want the brook, if we want the developer to pay for the brook to be open,
Right.
and not the city to pay for that, then we kind of got to give them a couple of extra apartment units.
Yeah, and
It's a
it was not just the rest of the cost of the restoration of the brook, but that's been an industrial site. So we know there's probably some contamination that needs to be addressed in order to restore the brook, so it's safe enough for people to walk along, that the water going in and out of it, because it's not just Trout Brook. We've actually got an image for the plan that we haven't shown of where Trout Brook connects all the way down through
Right.
the downtown and into Camp Hallow.
Right.
So we want to make sure that there's sufficient return to cover the costs of that cleanup. But I think your point, actually, you want to talk more about the green space? Okay. What's your note about it?
Go ahead. Go.
We're fighting over the mic.
So there is, and here it's difficult to grasp the scale, but
Okay.
this is quite big.
Oh, good.
And then we have at least 3 bigger areas. We have the main one up, then we have here this one, and then under. Here we have also some activations, some places to stay, playground, open theater,
Oh, great.
things to activate the area. Because sometimes having the green, it doesn't mean that it's active and being used. It's more what you need is the program around it and the program in the park to make it really active. We want this to be for the neighbors and to be quality green, let's say. But it's quite big, so in the next drafts, we'll have more area, more sections and some views. So we really understand the scale of it.
And it's, I'll just yell loud enough, as part of the Two Rivers plan that we've been working on, there is a way from Ames Street to come down and into Tukas Park, and then Tukas Park can continue all the way down to Ashfield. Ashfield?
No.
I'm confused at the moment, sorry, I'm getting old.
Puffer
And-
Park, maybe? CSX Rail Yard?
And then through that, the next part, there's some
Yes, it
industrial
goes
area.
all the way through.
Snow, CSX,
Yes,
Yeah.
all the way down to
begins with a P,
Puffer Park.
Puffer Park.
Is the
Yeah.
high, yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's this whole
That would be
corridor
great.
of mixed-use path, trail that connects and celebrates the river rather than putting it behind a fence like it was bad, and it's in prison. So.
Any other questions? So there's a couple of other things that we thought of that we just wanted to make sure everybody understood. Zoning is not the only control on developments. So the gentleman over there mentioned concerns about fire safety. The building code comes into effect. It requires specific distances between buildings. Sprinklers, the Board of Health comes into effect for some of this. The Conservation Commission, there's a brook there, there's wetlands there, on several different things. All of those rules still apply, so the zoning is only one of many things that control what can happen. But the key is to get, what we really, really want to hear from you today is, does this, let's face it, this is an aspirational view. This is something that we're looking at that over a long period of time could transform the experience of people who are living here now, who work here, who want to live here and work here in the future. We did go, because of what we heard in the public meetings, we went aspirational. We wanted to make something or show concepts that could really make this area even more special than it is. We wanted to be able to preserve these gorgeous, historic building patterns and buildings. We want to hear from you tonight. Are we on the right track? Did we miss something? Are you concerned about anything? We're going to be over by the boards and by the layout of the communications. Happy to answer any questions. We've got ways that you can write down comments and put them on. And then we're very excited to take what we hear tonight back and put it into a plan that lets you all take the next step. So with that, I'm just going to turn it over to there. And then if there's any group questions we need to answer at the end, we will. But if you need to leave after commenting, we totally understand. Thank you very much.